Hi, everyone. My name is Xandi, and my pronouns are they, them, theirs. I am currently my last year at Gallatin, and my concentration is women's and labor history. I want to begin tonight. Thank you. I want to begin tonight, like everyone else, by saying thank you to all those who worked to put this night together and to make this fellowship happen over the last year. It's really been a significant and wonderful experience for me. I also want to extend my epic gratitude to Professor Kim Phillips-Fine, who was my partner and mentor for the independent study during the spring semester, as well as Jacob Remus, who has been a phenomenal advisor over these last 4 years. Finally, and importantly, thank you to the Domestic Workers United community for your welcoming spirit this summer. As I just mentioned, I spent this summer predominantly working with Domestic Workers United, which is an organization that seeks equality and fair labor standards for domestic workers in New York City. While I did have the opportunity to interact virtually with many of the group's members, most of my partnership and communication has been with Christine Lewis, who is the Secretary of Cultural Outreach for Domestic Workers United, as well as Eileen Condon, who is the grant writer. I'm going to start this presentation with a little clip of a recorded conversation I had with Christine, who describes in this clip, in broad strokes, how she got involved with the movement. I wanted to start with this clip because Christine has a sort of electrifying energy and presence that she brought and brings to every town hall, which happen every Saturday. And I wanted to give you a taste of what that was like this summer.
So that's why we give to each other, right? We share, because here what? This is this person who you want to say, leave that job, don't take it. But do I have the capacity to tell that person to leave the job? No, I don't. So here what? If we rally and come together and belong to this entity that could fight as a whole for workers around the country and around the state, we're dealing with the state right now. Why not? And push back. Or if somebody knows that there is a job available, I could say to Xandi, leave that job, Xandi. I'll ask this person if they need somebody tomorrow and know that perhaps you'll get the job also. Yeah, but it's standing for a cause, belonging, standing. What do? Do we stay silent, against things that matter and allow them to fester? No. Especially women who work in the homes, especially women who are immigrants, especially women who are working documented and undocumented, especially women who are just taking care of folks' home and making it as pristine as it could be, and yet being exploited. Would they be exploited? Would they accept that on their jobs or no? They're working on the books. Why not make your job worthwhile, worthy of going to, right? Because all jobs are sacred. I don't care what you do. It's supposed to be sacred and considered and good. You know why? Because here what? If the janitorial workers, the sanitation workers don't pick up those in the heights of COVID-19, don't pick up those trash at the corner of our streets, what happened? Okay. Then there'll be a total pandemic. Mm-hmm. Okay, coupled with COVID-19, right? So all jobs are sacred. Taking care of people's children, taking care of people's children, taking care of people's home, taking care of people's loved one, your grandparents, that person who we entrust the care for your grandparents, right? You want to be able to do what is right by that person, to ensure the goodwill and making sure that your parents or your partner's children or your children is well taken care of. And that reflects by the relationship you have with your employer.
All right. Now I'm going to talk about a bit of background. As quickly and comprehensively as possible, I'm going to discuss what's kind of shaping this work. So the National Labor Relations Act, which was passed in 1935, explicitly excludes domestic and agricultural workers from the right to collectively bargain. For some context on that act, in 1930, 65% of Black workers were engaged in either domestic or agricultural work, So the exclusion here, which prohibits domestic and agricultural workers from collectively bargaining, is a clear form of racial discrimination. The NLRA has not been amended since 1935 to eradicate this exclusion, and thus it is still illegal for domestic workers to unionize on a federal level. Now to mention quickly how I kind of came into this work. During my freshman year, I took a class called Work Freedom and Social Change with Jacob Remus. And I learned about wages for housework, which was a feminist movement in the 70s that centralized reproductive and home labor as work in the formal sense, work worth a wage and worth respect. Most of the literature on wages for housework, I noticed, though, blaringly lacks a discussion of domestic labor under slavery, as well as the contemporary implications for predominantly Caribbean Black women and women of color, of the fact that this work still lacks cultural recognition, respect, and comprehensive legal standards. So in terms of local efforts to address this, the Domestic Workers Bill of Rights was passed in New York State in 2011, which afforded domestic workers the right to overtime pay and days of paid rest. And then Intro 339 is a current proposition which will hopefully amend New York City human rights law to include individuals who employ domestic workers and thus providing workers with protection against discrimination in the workplace. And I just want to note that this is something we can all work toward by calling Speaker Corey Johnson and emailing him. There are a bunch of scripts online that you can find to ask that this proposition be brought to the floor. All right, so here are some photos from the Domestic Workers United Facebook page, just for a little visual. And then I'm going to talk about this summer a little bit. COVID-19, of course, deeply affected the plans, shifted focus onto more urgent concerns. An emphasis has been placed on the weekly town halls, which I mentioned earlier, and those have been consistent since May. Bringing together domestic workers in solidarity and conversation. Each week we have a presenter speaking on a particular topic relevant to domestic workers. This program is still ongoing at the moment, as well as the food box program we have going with Maple Street Community Garden, which is a garden in Brooklyn that has provided fresh food boxes to domestic workers in the city. The website is still being worked on, should be up soon, we hope in the next couple of weeks. And then finally, the love offerings are stipends for domestic workers, and they are the result of fundraising efforts on the part of Domestic Workers United. Looking forward, so there are, of course, many ways in which the working conditions of domestic workers in New York City can be improved, better regulated and better paid. There is the legal route, the passage of Intro 339, for example, which I mentioned earlier. There is the cultural shift that hopefully continues to take place as this work becomes more visible. I want to highlight as well that this is an interpersonal matter as well as a collective and cultural one. It implicates all of us, those of us who work as nannies, babysitters, caregivers, those of us who employ domestic workers, those of us who were given care in our lives at any point. We all have a stake in this movement, and we all have a stake in care labor being recognized for the value that it has, both on a social and an economic, political level. I will end with the ever important tenet of solidarity, that which Domestic Workers United centralizes in its every effort, and I hope to as well. Part of the solidarity that I'm talking about here is the pleasure that people have in meeting, in getting together, and I hope that what we are accomplishing here tonight is something to that effect. Conversing, bringing our experiences to the table, and simply showing up as we are.